For 5 years, the Champions Chess Tour has delivered a spectacle of high-level chess, with some of the biggest prizes the game has seen. Its 6th iteration is no different. With $1.5 million and 12 spots in the Esports World Cup on the line, the best of the best are coming together for the first tour stop of the year. The Chessable Masters.
Where is the checkmate coming in? Do you just...
Here we go.
That was sick from Alireza.
In the spotlight, of course, is Magnus Carlsen. He's the undisputed 5-time champion of the CCT.
He gets a win.
Bringing home the tour finals every year since its inception.
The winner of the Champions Chess Tour, world #1, Magnus Carlsen, does it again.
The Chessable Masters has always provided a fiery start to the tour.
What a result, 2-0.
With the likes of Hikaru Nakamura, Ding Liren, and Wesley So all having taken home their own crown for the event.
Wesley So wins the Chessable Masters.
The stakes are higher than they have ever been. Who will etch their name into the CCT's legacy? Who will get their chance to make history at the Esports World Cup? It all starts with the Chessable Masters.
Welcome back to the 2025 Chessable Masters as part of the Champions Chess Tour. Grandmaster Aman Hambleton, Women's Grandmaster Dina Belankaya back again. And Dina, got a comment on the attire already. I think we know where your allegiance lies for the upcoming match.
Absolutely. As a commentator, I'm certainly not biased, but you know, some viewers in chat would appreciate, and that is all for them.
Love it. I love it. We are getting into, of course, Hikaru Nakamura against Magnus Carlsen. This is your grand final. So this means that obviously the guys are going to get into a match with best of 4, but I mean, we could have a reset happening here. So to make sure that everything gets explained properly to the viewers before we get into things, let's listen to this chess.com video explainer.
The road to the Esports World Cup starts now. With 1.5 million on the line, the stakes have never been higher. Only 12 players will qualify from the Champions Chess Tour, and with just 2 events to earn points, every move counts. That's why this year's CCT is bigger, bolder, and more intense than ever. All matches are now placed at a blazing fast 10+0 time control, and the playoff bracket has doubled. 16 players will fight for survival instead of just 8. It all starts with a high-stakes 9-round Swiss, where the top 15 advance. But here's the twist. The #1 seed gets first pick in the playoff bracket. The next 7 finishers pick their opponents, setting up a ruthless best-of-2 showdown to claim the final playoff spots. Then it's game on. 8 qualifiers take on 8 invited titans in a double elimination slugfest. Winners bracket matches are best of 4. The lower bracket stays best of 2. And if it's dead even, cue the clutch Armageddon tiebreaker. Every match, every move, every second matters, because only the best make it to the Esports World Cup. The Chessable Masters is here. This is do or die mode. Let's go.
Well, you guys just heard it. There is truly no better match than Hikaru Nakamura. But Dina, let's have a look at how they got there, right? Because we have Magnus Carlsen started way back in round 1 against Esipenko. Kind of moved on, I would say, pretty reasonably, right? Against Yu Yangyi, a comfortable match, and Esipenko as well. But then that match against Arjun, he was up against it. We actually thought he might blow the entire lead as Arjun made the comeback and almost got it done in Armageddon, but Magnus prevailed, probably his toughest challenge of the event. And then he played Hikaru and beat him. He sent him down to the losers bracket. So they have already played before, which means that Hikaru had to battle even further, right? He had to go down to the losers bracket and make his way back up, and he did so by beating Jan Nepomniachtchi in a thriller. So, Dina, this creates our grand final, Hikaru and Magnus, but most importantly, there could be a reset, Dina. So obviously, in a double elimination, Magnus Carlsen, he still has 2 lives. So lots of pressure on Hikaru here.
Well, you know, I'm on lots of pressure, but also sometimes you just have nowhere to go, and you gotta be there and you gotta win, because that's the only way.
That's right. So we are playing a best of 4. Armageddon is still possible, and we're still playing with no increment. So if Magnus Carlsen wins the first match, that's it, right? Hikaru has already been to the losers bracket. It will be the second time that he loses that match to Magnus. That will be it. So if we want more chess today and more airtime for this pineapple shirt of yours, then Hikaru has to win not just one match, but win again in order to take the title.
And we see that he's already on his spot, getting ready for this very important match. And so is Magnus Carlsen, who has just arrived. They are in their, kind of getting in their zone. Well, Hikaru was slightly bored, I would say, but that's only because he knows how easy it is gonna be today for him.
It looks like he's already in his zone. He got there a while ago. It's Team Liquid, it's Team Falcons. I'm excited, Dina. This is literally the greatest match that we have to offer in the world of chess, and potentially we get to see it twice.
Absolutely. Hopefully, Aman, hopefully. I think for Hikaru Nakamura, he just needs to go into this match with an ambition to show his best chess and have a great match, and whoever is better today, that person will deserve the win.
And Hikaru has been outspoken about his own play in that first match. I mean, I think that Magnus recognized that wasn't the best Hikaru that showed up. And Hikaru himself, will freely say that. He's got a lot more to offer than that first match. It was 2.5 to half. It didn't feel like the competitive match that we're used to seeing from these two. So I think on a different day, refocused, he didn't just finish a thrilling Armageddon against Alireza. I think that we are going to see a much closer match.
Yes, and Jan Nepomniachtchi, who was also just a snack for Hikaru on his path to get a revenge from Magnus. So all stars should be shining his way. We're expecting some really nice chess today.
That's right. And of course, Armageddon always possible if it's tied 2-2. The first couple games are going to be interesting to see, is anyone going to take any of those risks? If you're Hikaru Nakamura, maybe you're also thinking back to the first match that they played in this tournament and starting to think, okay, where did I go wrong there? Maybe he got a little over ambitious in some positions that maybe he could have made a draw in. So I wonder if he's going to be maybe being a bit more reserved in the first couple of games and just play his game and go from there.
I expect 1b3, whatever happens.
That is a strong prediction, Dina. I love it. We are getting set for the games here. Obviously, 2.5 points clinches the best of 4. And in the event of a tied match, we always have Armageddon to settle it. So, Dina, we are just about to start here, and all eyes are going to be on this match. It is the only one remaining.
The history is about to be made, ladies and gentlemen. This is the very first Chessable Masters qualifier, and we got the moves.
Let's go. All right, we have e4, e5. So the players are, honestly, not necessarily fighting for an Esports World Cup spot. I'm sure that both of these players are going to be there, guaranteed at this point. But there's a lot on the line when these two match up. It's pride, it's prize money, and they're representing their esports orgs.
And for the first time ever, chess is gonna be a part of the esports World Cup. So yeah, that's a big thing for everybody, for all of us, even for you and me, Aman.
100%. Let's talk chess here. We have e4, e5. Now, looking very, very timid here to start off. Nothing too crazy. Hikaru had so many battles against Alireza and even Nepo. They kind of repeated that line where the white queen got over to a2. So it made me think when I saw this, is Magnus interested in playing some of those variations? It seems like not quite, and very, very reasonable start here. White goes for h3, black retreating the bishop, getting out of the way of moves like b4, moves like d4. But I think we're going to see classic slow maneuvering. Knight from d2 can even go to f1 and g3. This is a very typical maneuver, and black might do the same. Knight e7 to g6, and then maybe pawn c6.
Yep, that's a very classic way of starting the game. In a way, boring, if I may. I'm pretty sure for Magnus it is looking boring, but he needs to be careful because this is, when you relax too much, this is where your opponent gets you. And yeah, I mean, the amount of games that has been played in this line is probably the same as the amount of stars in the galaxy.
Yeah, and even between these two players, they've played so much. But I was kind of thinking back that the last time they've really matched up has been almost more than a year ago in a serious event. They kind of traded wins in the Speed Chess Championship. I think 2022 Nakamura got the win, and then 2023 Carlsen got the win. So these are just the literal two best players in online chess.
Yep. And looking at this position here, we see b3, an interesting way of developing your bishop. From the other side, some fianchetto, or maybe just bishop on a3, preparing the pressure over this diagonal. But look at this bishop b5, pinning the knight and saying, I don't need your bishop.
Yeah, okay. Hikaru's kind of looking to the side, kind of processing the last couple moves. I thought they did look a little strange, particularly the move b3. Not really used to this move. The knight on d2 moving to f1, making way for the dark squared bishop to develop is a bit more standard. Bishop could go to e3, trade off for black's pretty powerful bishop aimed at white's king. But instead, we see b3. Now, you're right. It might be to get that bishop out, but interestingly, the move b3 could just be for bishop b2 and pawn to d4, just supporting the central advance there.
That would be the dream come true, having such a strong and big center with those pawns. And bishop d7, Hikaru is saying, all right, buddy, you don't want to trade? I'll find you anyway.
I'm looking at the move d4 here, but the square on b4 will always be available for that piece. So in case white does play d4 here, black could capture it, and then the b4 square would become sort of permanently available. And what an interesting way to develop the pieces here. Bishop d2 not going for the d4 push, but perhaps indicating, as you've shown there, that the b4 push is on his mind.
Yeah, and look at this. It's almost like a mind game here. I play b3 because I want to play bishop b2. Oh, no, I want to play bishop d2. You thought I wanted to play d4? No, b4 is on the way.
Yeah, I mean, look, the computer is having no problems with Hikaru's position at all. But I have to say that it's a bit of a mysterious way that Magnus has developed so far. Is Hikaru confused at all? Because he seems to be moving his bishops quite a bit here, right? The bishop went out to e6, and then it went back to d7 to match the move bishop b5. But then we saw the bishop on b6 getting kicked around. The knight went to c4. It moved up to c5. Then Magnus made another move. It goes back to a7. It's almost like just can't decide where to put those pieces safely. I still like his position, but interesting that he's kind of reacting.
Bishop takes c6, giving away the bishop in order to win a pawn, which is not a real pawn because of bishop f2. What is going on? I see Magnus Carlsen is trying to close the position.
Yeah, there's opposite bishops here as well. Bishops that are not operating on the same colors. Black has the light squared bishop, white has the dark squared bishop. It just means that, yeah, this already is reflected in the evaluation bar. Very, very even game. And I wonder why Magnus would be interested in trading in that pawn on the side of the board, the A pawn, for the F2 pawn. And of course, his king is a little bit out and exposed.
Yeah, and that's why he just played king g1, putting the king back where it belongs. I am slightly worried about a4. You think it's a cool pawn on the side, but it's not really a passable pawn. Right now, it's a backwards pawn. Okay, he's moving it. Very fair.
He heard you, I think. Yeah, he wanted to make sure that didn't end up as a weakness at all. I thought we might be getting the move d5 and maybe opening things up. But Hikaru playing a bit more cleverly. I think he's just rerouting some of his pieces. The knight on f6 truly, without a pawn break, wasn't doing that much. So I think everyone's just rerouting.
And you think about knight c5, right? But if you put the knight on c5 and then the bishop takes c5, then white could actually be with a better knight against the bishop because the position would be closed. And all those pawns would actually be restraining the bishop. So I'm not even sure that knight d7 is heading to c5. Maybe it's, as you said, just to play f6.
F6 could be f5 as well. I think that black is interested in some of these d5, f5 type of moves just to open things up. And we see captures on b5 followed by knight c5. d3 is clearly a hit here in this position. So bishop very likely to move. Bishop b4 looks like a standard reply. Bishop e3 kind of highlights that we need to keep an eye on that a5 pawn. Just because we moved it up from a4 might not be a weakness on a5 because of the bishop. It means you do need to leave the bishop there.
Yeah, very well spotted. We certainly do not want to blunder that a5 pawn. And I want to add that right now, looking at this b5 and a5, you clearly see a future pass pawn. So completely different situation from what we saw like 30 seconds ago. And it could become a serious headache for black.
Well, the game has kind of like settled down a little bit, right? The plans are clear here. Opposite bishops, there's that outside pass pawn for Magnus. So you can always appreciate that that's where white's going to try to play. I wonder if we'll see queen to b1 here, kind of a multi-purpose move. Also watching over the d3 pawn a little bit. And I've been sort of waiting and wondering about Hikaru's plan. He's definitely improving his pieces, but I wonder, is he going to strike with some move like d5? Looks less likely now after that last move, or even the move f5, just always in the position.
Yeah, Hikaru certainly needs to create a counterattack, just something to play with, because otherwise he will be just waiting until the a pawn promotes.
Yeah, for the moment, it's the case where, okay, maybe he's not going for any of these breaks, but there's nothing wrong with his position. White's pieces also are a little bit, placed a little bit strange. Rook on a3, queen on b1, but there is some kind of coordination here. The a pawn also can't really move. Obviously, right now, if you move it, you lose it, but still, as soon as that pawn goes up one more square, it's too far in black's territory that it's so easy to attack and just win. So I think a5 is kind of as far as it can go right now. And I think we need to, for both sides here, Dina, use one of the rules that you've been talking about in the broadcast. Take one of your worst pieces and think about how to improve it.
So rook e8?
Yeah, I mean, rook a8 hasn't even moved, and it might actually be one of the better pieces in the position. It's not too poorly placed there. The bishop from e6 just went back to d7, which was rather odd. From white's position, I'm looking at the knight on f3, and I'm thinking, okay, it would be great maybe if that piece was on c4. Don't mind the knight on the c4 square. We'd be hitting b6, d6. Yeah, knight on d5 is another good one. So perhaps knight on f3 is the next piece that I would be thinking about, which means maybe bishop from d2. I might consider moving to e3, especially after this last move. And in order to do that, it means I need to defend my a pawn. Magnus says, no defending, I'm pushing. I'm surprised by this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say maybe it would be more potential for the passer in the endgame, sort of joker that you can pull once the queens are off the board. But no, he's going for it. And I noticed that the evil bar wasn't as happy, but apparently there is nothing concrete.
Yeah, Magnus has definitely, calculated this reasonably. My first thought is that the pawn is a little bit too far because it's now outside of the range of the white bishop on d2. If it goes one more square up to a7, you could see how the dark squared bishop could go to e3 and provide very nice defense with the white rook also doubling on the a file and just hold on to that pawn forever. But that being said, Dina, I'm not sure that it can make it safely to a7. Black's going to play knight c5. Black's going to play queen c7. And wow, this looks like such an interesting decision.
And bishop b5, hitting the d3 pawn, stopping white from putting all their pieces on to help with the pawn. But why is it so bad?
I don't know. I'm looking at d4, right? That's the sort of first consideration, just because it's attacked, and this looks like the knight could recapture nicely. But there are lots of tactics and things to worry about. E4 might be loose at the end. Knight d3 can happen anyway. But a7 is quite defended, better than I thought. Maybe Hikaru's trying to play rook e7 next and just take on a7. It looks like white cannot add another defender. So if the engine likes white's position here, Dina, it's telling me there has to be kind of an important move here. We can't just play a slow move because rook e7 and maybe taking that pawn is coming.
Bishop e3. Magnus is hitting the knight with the idea if the knight moves, then the bishop would be protecting the pawn, but the knight certainly doesn't want to move. Hikaru's just going to go rook to e7.
So what happens if the pawn gets captured here? I guess, is it rook b1 almost? Yeah, you can go rook d1, and the knight will just return.
Knight to d3. Is that time to sacrifice the rook?
I mean, if I'm sacrificing, I need a pretty good reason. The thing about the move bishop e3 is it's one of those things where you just fully allow your opponent to play the move they threatened. And that's always a humbling experience in chess. When you make a threat against someone and they say, yeah, please do it, then all of a sudden you start really second guessing yourself.
And what if we would just put the rook on b1, attacking the bishop who's protecting the knight?
Yeah, rook b1, bishop c4, and then maybe rook c3. I wasn't sure about this position. Maybe we can kind of get a pin here, and yeah, the black queen can't really get out of this. It just feels like a position that tactically could fail.
Yep. And then the knight would come to d2 and attack the bishop.
And I think
also,
we have this on the board.
Correct.
I can't
was just
believe
gonna
this. We were
say-
looking at this in analysis, and I was like, no, there's no way, because the rook would go to c3. Rook c3 looked like a good move, but Magnus maybe just played an even better one, knight d2. What does Hikaru do about this?
The bishop is attacked. The bishop is protecting the knight. It looks like just a simple overcharge. The tactic that the 1100s are usually studying days and nights.
Well, let's be serious here for a second, because the move knight d3 by Hikaru, I wonder what he overlooked here, right? A player as strong as Hikaru, he knows that Magnus is not just going to encourage him to take a pawn and not have anything for that, right? Like he's got to have something prepared. So I wonder what he missed here. He clearly overlooked something. Yes, the bishop is attacked. I think the threat is simply rook over to c3, and you can't do anything about moving that bishop because the knight still needs protection.
And looking at Hikaru's face, he's certainly not happy. He's realizing what's going on. He's nodding his head. He looks like it stinks. The position stinks.
Maybe pawn to d5? Like at this point, I'm just trying to save everything. I'm sure this move is no good. I'm trying to protect everything, but there's so many threats. The rook c3, and let's not forget, white has a pass pawn protected on a7. So even if we don't win a piece here, we can appreciate that in order to get out of this tangled mess that he's put himself in, he's not going to be able to also handle a pass pawn on the 7th rank.
And he's going low on time already. Only 1 minute for Hikaru Nakamura versus 4 minutes for Magnus Carlsen. Honestly, this looks just too good to be true.
Yeah, unfortunately, with no increment here, Hikaru feels that he has to spend the time because, he's shaking his head. He knows that the engine is obviously reflecting here, but his evaluation is going to be the exact same. There's probably not a way to save the piece without heavy material loss, and he's going to try d5. What else can you do? But I think he knows that there's just no saving all of these tangled pieces.
But Aman, if we think about this position and f5 happened on the board, it's almost like taking the pawn on d3 wasn't the crucial mistake. It seemed like it was already a bad situation that you just needed to find any play.
Yep, definitely agree. Knight takes d3 was definitely the nail in the coffin, but it was trending towards a nice position for Magnus, and he basically correctly evaluated that this pawn on the a file would be strong. I can even say myself, I was looking at it and I thought, well, if it goes up into black's position, surely we'll just be able to win it. And as he defends the knight here, I think we know maybe he's going to try a queen g3 just to, last ditch effort, but he lost the piece and he's got 27 seconds. This is unfortunately going to be Magnus's first win.
There is a cute little tactic, knight to f2, and if bishop takes f2, then rook takes... And it's not enough?
Well, I think that the a7 pawn is almost worth an entire rook, and Magnus is looking at 20 seconds for his opponent and thinking to himself, okay, why am I going to stress trying to find the absolute perfect defense? Let me just sack some material. I already won some, so it just doesn't matter. And he correctly evaluates that was the easiest path to victory. And Magnus Carlsen takes game number 1 in the grand finals against Hikaru Nakamura. And honestly, Hikaru going to be kicking himself. He's kind of words of encouragement to himself on the camera right there. as he knows that was not his best game, and he clearly, Dina, missed something in the calculations there.
But as a matter of fact, is he live on his own stream right now?
I believe that he does some commentary. I'm not sure he himself would be, but I believe he has a team covering almost all of his events. So yeah, I definitely expect there to be some coverage there.
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest to mic on, but then it would be an advantage into Magnus's favor, so probably not. This is too important for a match to reveal all the secrets.
Well, who knows if he's saying things that can be put on air. Right now, I wouldn't blame him. Magnus Carlsen is up 1-0 against Hikaru Nakamura. He takes the first game pretty comfortably, but really off the back of that knight takes d3 move. You just have to be more suspicious of your opponent if they're handing you that pawn. And we have to see something from Hikaru with the white pieces. Dina, congratulations. You correctly predicted b3.
Yes, and I'm so excited to see that. Now the question is e3? Yes, I was gonna say, or g3. Whoa. G6, this fianchetto, we talked about it yesterday, Aman, and you said you were not a fan of this. I believe Jan Nepomniachtchi did that against Hikaru.
That's right. We've definitely seen these types of positions before. For Hikaru, I think the nice thing for him is that at least there's a very clear imbalance. I can't speak and say, oh, it's immediately better for him or anything, but there's a clear imbalance, right? We have a bishop traded for a knight. Also, the pawn structure is completely shattered. So I think what he might be trying to do is trade the d pawn for the c pawn here. And then black would have a number of pawn weaknesses. The doubled f pawns, we can clearly see stacked on top of each other, but also the pawn in the middle of the board on d5 will become isolated without any pawn support on its flanks. And so maybe even though he's going to be, lacking some central control and certainly lacking the bishop, which is a very strong piece in this soon to be open position, I definitely think he could try to play positionally against that d pawn. And that might be his plan here.
Very interesting. And it looks like Hikaru knows everything inside and out, because he literally spent only 15 seconds and he took that knight with his bishop almost pre-moving. Now we see our favorite pawn structure, the isolated pawn on d5. And, the c pawn could be a potential weakness as well for white, but probably just putting it on c3 and chilling and saying, what are you going to do with your bishop?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Pawn to c3 will completely fix the d pawn. Great tip when any of us are playing against an isolated pawn, like the d pawn. A lot of players, I think, make a mistake and they think, oh, it's isolated, it's got no support. Let me attack it and win it. But usually what you need to do first is pin it down so it can't move. So as you said, moves like c3, rook d1 are much more important. And once you hold it down, then you can start piling up the pressure. Now, there's definitely no big advantage to speak of here, but I have to say structurally, this is definitely a position that Hikaru can play. So we'll see how it develops here. Magnus cannot be unhappy with this opening. There's a positional deficit, but look how strong that black bishop is. There's pressure on c3 just as there is pressure on d5.
I will add that I'm surprised by how fast Hikaru removed this knight, almost saying, I don't want to trade because I want to play against your bishop and against your d5 pawn, and if you trade, then I wouldn't just have enough chances to play for a win.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if he's bothered by the trade, but you're right. It could be that he wants to maintain some pieces. Also, I think he's just kind of clearing the way. Like he wants the knight to watch over the c3 pawn while he puts pressure on the d5 pawn. And he needs the knight out of the way in order to attack it.
Yeah, and the only active plan here for black would be to push f4, potentially playing g5 and then f4, or somewhere sacrificing the f4 in order to make this pawn strong. But unlike any other typical isolated pawn structures, there is a c3 pawn, right? So even if the d pawn would be deviated, it would still, like d5 pawn would not become a passed pawn. It would still be an isolated pawn. So honestly, other than just sit and wait, I don't see any active plan for Magnus.
Yeah, there's always things the players can do here, but I expect that we will see the evaluation by the computer remain very close to the center of the board, very close to 0.00, just by the nature of the position. Moves that Hikaru is probably going to consider. I would say a rook on d3 will be quite well placed, just because it also defends the c3 pawn. So you can kind of defend your pawn while doubling the rooks on the d pawn. So I'm wondering if we're going to see something like that. As for Magnus, he doesn't need to do anything. So while you're right, Dina, he might not have an active plan. Guess what? He doesn't need one. He can just sit there, put all the pressure on c3 and say, if you ever win my d5 pawn, I'm definitely going to win your c3 pawn. I'm up 1-0 in the match. Let's see what you can do.
And the next game, Magnus would be getting white, which also helps this whole situation. But I do love the fact that we saw h4 and h5 for Hikaru, because that completely stops any activity of black on the king side. Once again, maybe it's not needed, but it's a nice way of putting your pawns. And you know, when you're playing with a knight against the bishop, it is pretty smart to put your pawns on the same color as your opponent's bishop, simply because you are restricting this bishop, as long as you don't lose those pawns in a way.
That's right. Yeah, and in endgame, the pawns on dark squares for white with that bishop might be a problem, but we're so far from that happening. And as you can see, Hikaru is willing to make that trade, bishop for knight. He's not holding back. In fact, knight takes e5 is probably a move that he would be reasonably interested in. But at the same time, I do think that Magnus is going to be okay with this. Let's see how Hikaru manages the clock and the position, because if you take this exact same position with 6 minutes less on either clock, obviously someone's getting flagged. So I think he's just trying to, play moves, whittle the clock down, and just see if he can break through.
Indeed, if we had a situation with 30 seconds versus 1 minute, then Hikaru would just go all of a sudden aggressive and just complicate the position so that he could win in the time scramble.
Yeah, and look, there's not that much going on. I said that the evaluation bar very likely to hover around the equality mark, and that's exactly what we see. C4 has been played, and very likely to be mass exchanges here, because, yeah, the position is definitely even. The bishop does well with pawns on both sides of the board. Now, if the queens get traded here, I do think the position is a draw. Even if the knight and the bishop trade, I also think that the position could be a draw. Now, interesting. Does this maybe allow for... I was thinking about queen d4 at the end. How is that endgame?
Yeah, and then after f4, forcing the passed pawn to be created in the pawn endgame, but then queen could go to f6, but then just bringing the king, and black has no move.
Yeah, that's interesting. f4, there's also queen d4. And why don't we put that on the board? I mean, this is what the players are thinking about. If king f6... then I was thinking also queen b6, right?
Oh,
queen b6 just wins the pawn. And if you take the king move back, and actually the live position did not play it. That's a massive opportunity for Hikaru. I guess we'll go back to the live position, but I'm willing to say pretty certainly that he almost could win a pawn in that variation, guaranteed.
With the queen to d7 after... f6, and the trade once again is not in black's favor, because white would just have a passed pawn in the king endgame.
Wow, that's I can't say for sure, guaranteed win for Hikaru. Nothing like that. It wasn't that type of miss, but wow, I think that was a very significant moment in this match, and it just kind of happened out of nowhere. We were talking about trades, even me. I was like, oh, it's going to be around 0.00 the entire time. So he just maybe wasn't looking for it. But, Dina, he paused. He really thought about it. And I felt like he sensed there was a moment to calculate. He had 7 minutes on the clock. I bet he's going to wish that he spent a little more time on that.
Yeah, because, this is those moments when you lose a guard and something can happen. And for Magnus, it takes only a little bit of too much relaxing in the moment. And then Hikaru could certainly have chances. And once again, with the time advantage. But, I also want to add, we already talked about it yesterday, if our audience remembers. But whenever you are playing a queen endgame with a knight and a bishop, usually a queen and a knight are so much stronger, just because there is nothing that queen cannot do that bishop can, which is not the same case for the knight. So those two could reach more harmony and more attacking chances, and even just forks and tricks and blunders in the time scramble, just because the knight is so tricky.
Yeah, I agree with that. The knight is the piece I'd rather have here, definitely. Also, considering the match situation, I think Magnus is, more than comfortable making a draw, whereas Hikaru is the one saying, I'd like to try to generate something from this. I'm up a minute, but truthfully, 5 minutes in this position for Magnus should be enough. Yeah, that's right. A nice threat there with b5.
And queen d5, white does not want to trade, but white should always watch out for b5, similar to black, who should always watch out to the queen activation here. For now, king is covering all the squares, it looks like.
Yeah, I would say that at this point, I know we keep talking about that moment missed, but to me, that was the biggest chance of the entire endgame. So really unfortunate that Hikaru, at the very least, didn't spend more time there, because you knew that he knew something was up there, right? He paused, started thinking. He was definitely looking at that exact thing. He must have misevaluated something. But okay, back to the live position here. He's obviously trying to squeeze something out of this. Notice how black's bishop is always on that square, just 2 squares in between the bishop and the knight. So any square the knight's trying to move to in a forward motion, I mean, it's just not possible. When the knight was sitting on d3, the bishop was on d6. So Magnus doing a good job so far containing the pieces.
And if you take this knight and just place it anywhere on the board, unfortunately, you cannot even find the right square for the knight where it would be powerful, other than on f6, of course. Just because, let's say even if you put it on d4, the bishop would always attack, and then the knight would have nowhere to go because of the pawns. How beautifully pawns are restraining the knight, together with the bishop, making it a perfect harmony.
Yeah, let's take a moment to observe. Dark squared bishop for Magnus, light square pawns everywhere. That's always going to be a pretty good combination. But Hikaru is really not risking anything in this position. He's playing on, he's up on time. Magnus is doing enough in terms of defense right now, but if Hikaru can kind of shuffle a little bit, maybe make a pawn move eventually, and keep that distance on time, then you're talking about an advantage.
Yeah, although you notice how the time advantage already really low down to 30 seconds only.
Yep, and pay attention, guys. I know we keep talking about that bishop and knight, but there they are again, 2 squares in between them. And I guess that was that a repetition? Obviously, it must have been, right? That was no way that was 50 moves. So, I mean, the thing about threefold repetition is it's the same position 3 times. It doesn't matter if it happened last week, today, 2 moves ago. It's 3 times the same position, and that's why that game ended up as a draw.
Well, it certainly happened last week, because I don't even recall us having this position.
Yeah, the players are honestly probably both reviewing the game. Like, when did that happen the other 2 times? And that's what they're doing right now. But that is officially a draw in game 2. And I'm not sure if we're following the same path as the first match that these two played, Dina, but it really feels eerily similar. Where Magnus got off to a start, Hikaru made a draw, and then there was another game to conclude the match. We're in danger of that happening here for Hikaru fans. Remember, Magnus Carlsen, 1.5 to half over Hikaru right now, is on match point. If he wins, he will win the best of 4, and that will be it, right? It feels crazy to say that, but that could be it, Dina.
Yeah, I'm certainly getting worried a little bit for Hikaru, and having flashbacks for sure of the previous match, but we got some good news for you as well. Valentine's month is on the calendar.
That's right. If you love chess, then you are gonna love this. The Valentine's season is upon us. Chessable is spreading the love with up to 55% off courses as a Chessable Pro member. There are over 150 available in this sale, so now's your chance to learn from the very best authors in chess. Visit chessable.com/Valentines or !Valentines in chat to start browsing. We will be back with Game 3 of the grand finals between Team Liquid, Magnus Carlsen, and Team Falcons, Hikaru Nakamura.
Do you show a bunch of different faces to psych your opponents out?
He felt very uncomfortable answering that question.
He's lying, okay.
Do you have a Lee chess account?
Did you successfully trick the lie detector test at any point in the game?
Huge lie.
Are you really worth $50 million?
Are you intimidated by Magnus Carlsen?
Do you consider yourself a genius?
You know, he tried to dodge the question now.
No way he's telling the truth on that. I mean, I'm not even strapped in, but I'm nervous, so hopefully you're doing good.
Yeah, this
over
feels
there.
like when you're at the doctor and they take your blood pressure.
We're here with another episode of Lie Detector Chess. The one and only Hikaru Nakamura has been strapped in. Super Grandmaster, your streamer, World Fisher Random Champion, 5-time US Champion. I didn't come with a pedigree list beyond that, so we'll leave it there.
It's good enough.
Pretty good intro, okay. You know who he is, or you wouldn't be watching this video, that's the truth, because I'm just the guy asking the questions here. Hikaru has never seen these questions before, and I'm actually just seeing them for the first time now too. Let's go. Do you believe anybody is better than you at speed chess?
Yes.
Who?
Magnus Carlsen.
I think Hikaru's lying.
He's telling the truth.
He's telling the truth?
Yes.
Okay. I think Hikaru, okay, well, there's good to know.
Oh, wait. Now he's getting a reaction, so he's not really completely sure about it.
I'm gonna switch gears. Do you think if you focused on just classical chess, that you would become world champion?
In the current environment, yes.
True.
Love it.
Hikaru, can you make a first move now?
Sure.
Okay, here we go.
Just saying, all questions are going to revolve around Magnus. That's why there's the ambiguity.
Okay. No, I'm gonna get to some others here. All right, here we go. Do you think Levy can become a grandmaster?
No.
Very true.
Very true. Okay, there you go.
He's just a little bit too old. I think, as I've said a few times, if he were doing this maybe 3-4 years ago, I think he'd probably get to GM. But I think with the rating decline and where he's at, I just don't see it.
Okay. Has streaming made you a better chess player?
Yes.
Lie.
Really? Do you enjoy streaming more than playing?
Yes.
Both. He's not really sure.
Okay. Okay. I gotta go back to this. So you don't think streaming has made you a better chess player, or you were trying to break the machine?
I don't know.
Okay, we're gonna leave it at that. All right. Okay.
Can you ask him if he's trying to cheat on the test today?
No, there's ambiguity to the questions. That's why.
Okay, got it. Okay. I'm not trying to do your job or anything.
It's like I'll give you an example. If you ask me, do I enjoy playing classical chess more than streaming? That answer is probably gonna, like, if you ask me that question, it's gonna be yes. So it's like classical chess I probably like more, but I like streaming more than I like online blitz chess, for example. There's like ambiguity.
Yeah,
That's why.
That makes sense.
You know, he tried to dodge the question now, huh?
Is he?
Yeah.
Okay.
He tried to dodge the question whether you should ask him if he was going to try to cheat on this test today.
We are back at the 2025 Chessable Masters. Players, competitors on your screen. Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen, Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura. Dina, this is the grand final, and it's such an important game for Hikaru to just lock in and focus. He needs to get on the board and at least make sure he doesn't lose this game, because it could all end in the next one.
And we certainly do not want a repetition of the previous encounter just 2 days ago. Absolutely important game for Hikaru, lots of pressure. He's not happy, look at how he's nodding his head. But you know what? This is sport and you do not have any time to, reflect. You just need to be in the moment. This is a new game, new tournament.
That's right. New game, and he'll need a reset mentality. Now, the thing is, he's also going to be playing right now with the black pieces. It's a tall task to play with the black pieces, and against Magnus Carlsen, it's even tougher. But even a draw here would be an acceptable result because he can play with the white pieces in the final game and get that win. Now, in this event, Dina, he has not found a way to beat Magnus Carlsen in a game. So that's the feels like the mental block, the hurdle right now as the games are underway. He's got to get on the board with a draw at minimum here, or the tournament is it's going to be Magnus's.
Speaking of draws, did we just see a repetition?
Well, I did say that a draw was an acceptable result. It's kind of an interesting moment. I mean, as Hikaru, you have the black pieces and you only really need to beat him once. So if they just go to the next game, I mean, the fans out there, sorry guys, we didn't quite have a long game for you. It's kind of grimace, smirk from both players there. And well, thank you, pack it up. That's a draw, and we'll just head on to the next one.
And Magnus just left his chair with a moment of relief. I'm so confused. Magnus Carlsen having white pieces, wasn't that the moment to finish the match?
I mean, yes, definitely he could have finished the match right there. But look, he's also playing against someone who has never beaten him in this event, right? So if he makes a draw in the next game, he wins the match. So he's probably just feeling like maybe he hasn't been in too much danger against Hikaru. He's happy to make a draw here and then make a draw in the next one. And if he does it, it'll look like a smart decision. But if Hikaru wins here and ties it up for Armageddon, then that might look a little bit foolish in hindsight. The question is, and always will be, in this tournament, Dina, can Hikaru Nakamura beat Magnus Carlsen? He hasn't done it yet. He needs to do it right now.
Yeah, he just needs to put the Urchin Ergaisi mode on. And with 1b3, that's yet another Hikaru's favorite setup with the e3 and the bishop on this diagonal. I'm curious about bishop f6. Would that be certainly not the outcome that Hikaru would be the most happy with? But he does it. He gives the bishop away against the knight in the c4.
So I wonder if we're going to see d5, because to my knowledge, d5 is a very important move here, and he does play it. If you do not play d5, white brings the knight to c3, and you might never play d5. So I do think it looks a bit strange. Why bring the queen out and then all the way back? But I think it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, from my understanding, black is not supposed to have many difficulties in this variation. And I don't think Magnus has felt, in their previous game where he had black, you'd have to agree, apart from that one mistake where maybe Hikaru had a big chance, it didn't look like there was any danger the whole game.
Yeah, and well, at the same time, Hikaru is playing his favorite setup, his favorite opening. He played it in every single game in this Chessable Masters so far. So Hikaru is kind of also in his comfortable zone, and that's important when you really need to, strike. But that's interesting. Well, speaking of the pawn structure, this is different. This is a different situation from what we've seen before, because the d5 pawn has been traded. Now the bishop is gonna go to c4, probably attack f7, which is well protected, of course. But I wonder if we'll see d4 soon.
Yeah, the other thing about d4 though is it opens the dark squared bishop very, very nicely. And you have to remember, even though we talk about Hikaru in his comfort zone, completely agree. I mean, he's a total specialist at this opening, but this opening is not viewed as a top opening for a reason, right? You're not playing this opening for a significant opening advantage. In fact, you can see that the engine is even, of course, around equal, but even teetering in Black's favor. This just goes to show this is not an opening you play to generate a clear advantage, but it is something you play so you can get quick moves out and you can go for very specific targeted ideas that Hikaru will be very familiar with. That being said, I don't think anything against Magnus has been super effective at generating any type of advantage so far, which is why Magnus is saying, I'll make the crazy quick draw in that previous game. Let's go play your B3 opening again. It hasn't worked so far, and let's see if it does right now.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, it's fascinating how Hikaru can easily outplay all those little kids that he has done here at the Chessable Masters, but not Magnus Carlsen. There is only one person against whom this 1b3 does not work so far, and this is Magnus.
Yeah, it seems that way, but hey, all it takes is just one result. And hey, what about Queen d4 in that previous game? If he had made that trade and played Queen d4, he might have won that game. And all it takes is that one move, one moment, one game. He can bring it back to 2-2. Then suddenly you go in Armageddon. Maybe he gets the black pieces and he only needs to make a draw, right? So he doesn't need to beat Magnus over and over and over, but he does need to do it right now. Big decision here, Dina, after a6. Are you taking that knight and completely going 2 knights against 2 bishops, or perhaps retreating to e2 and maybe the d4 move you were talking about?
Yeah, in my opinion, you definitely have to retreat, because simply if you give away this bishop, the position would be open, and it's definitely not enough to generate any opportunities for the knights. And this pass pawn potential after d4, I think that's the only thing that Hikaru has an opportunity to create chances with.
Yeah, and I do think that you can do a few things before black castles, right? The bishop on f8 hasn't moved, so as much as Magnus's position by the engine is saying no problems, no problems at all, still, he's not ready to castle yet. It's going to take 2 more moves for that to happen, and as you're indicating, bishop e7 might be the preferred bishop move for Magnus, because bishop g7 leaves that c-pawn probably a bit too weak. He does keep the bishop. I have to say it's the decision that makes more sense to me, even though the engine is kind of frowning.
Yeah, and then we'll soon, and bishop e7, just like you pointed, preparing the castle. In this situation with 4 pawns like this, you do not need to worry about your king's safety, simply because the f6 is already covering the dark squared weaknesses, but also white does not have any dark squared bishop themselves, so it's not like anyone is going to attack the king. Very flexible way of putting this bishop. I highlight once again how masterly it is played on the level of a grandmaster. And now knight to e4, putting the pressure on the c5, right?
Yeah, I think this is the main plan in white's position. You've given up your dark squared bishop for the knight. You've forced black to commit the bishop to e7 rather than g7. And yes, it's all about the c-pawn. I was thinking that queen a5 could be a move played as a move in defense. And if white wants to pile up more with queen c2, there's always knight to b4, which does hit the queen and kind of also defends that c-pawn with the rook from c8. So it seems difficult to me after a queen defense from black. We actually see queen b6 instead of a5. It seems difficult to add more pressure to this pawn other than the d4 move that you keep talking about.
Yeah, and I do want to highlight to everybody wondering right now why b6 would not be the move, simply because the a6 pawn, unfortunately, would be falling. That was the whole idea. And now the fact that the queen is protecting the pawn, I would say it's not the most flattering position for the lady as we see on the position, but maybe it's just temporarily.
Yeah, I hard to imagine no knight b4 here. But actually, we see bishop f5. I was definitely expecting knight b4 and maybe the queen to move, but instead bishop f5, kind of solving the problem a bit more aggressively with a pin there. And let's remember as well, Magnus can make a draw, so Hikaru at any point just has to be careful of even opposite bishop positions, right? Bishop takes the knight on e4, could create some opposite bishop opportunities.
Yeah, I think in that case, Hikaru would have to go all in on the king using this e-pawn, this new e-pawn, in order to trade the f6, the defender, as I already mentioned. But I do want to say something positive about this position and Hikaru's situation. I do believe he has more chances right now to get the game rather than compared with the game number 2 where Hikaru had white
Right.
pieces.
Right. That's fair. There's a little bit more going on. Now, he's probably objectively taken a worse position here compared to last game in order to have those chances. But if you're in a must-win game, I agree that that's probably the position you should be in.
Yeah, and now the knight is on your favorite b4 square. a3 obviously is happening. Knight rerouting to d5. Now knight d2, very nice way of putting the knight. Preparing knight c4, kicking the queen, but you gotta be careful. b5 is gonna be on the way.
Yeah, the queen can actually go pretty nicely to the a7 square if it gets attacked. I would probably choose that over c7 just because c7 walks onto the c file, kind of dangerous with the rook there, and I'm looking at d4 and b4. So yeah, if the queen drops back to, and okay, it does go to c7. I was really confident in queen to a7 as a move there.
And now we see this blue little sneaky arrow suggesting d4, and Hikaru does it, opening the c-file for the rook. And knight d6, is that a blunder from Magnus Carlsen?
Well, it feels like, didn't I just say that? Why would you put the queen on c7? It's so strange there. And what did we talk about, Dina? All it takes is one move. All it takes is one decision. And he completely forgot that this move was even playable. That's a basic tactic, and Hikaru is right back in it.
And instead of sacrificing the rook, Magnus decides to give away his queen, which is even more questionable.
Yeah, I have to say I do agree with giving up the queen at this point because it feels like it's such an elementary win if you're just up the exchange. But at least here there's an imbalance, and there are some positions where you just can't really break through. So, and we see it's this is a fight, Dina. This is absolutely not game over or anything. Those are some very strong bishops, very strong rooks for Magnus. And despite the mistake, is this reminding you of their previous match? Do you remember when Magnus just blundered the entire piece and then Hikaru was still losing down a rook, right? He had an extra rook.
I'll be honest with you, Aman. I do not want to remember that.
There's probably one person in here who doesn't want to remember either, but it is reminding me exactly of that. Magnus blunders, and yet still it's almost equal. Crazy.
And what just happened? We were just processing the queen sacrifice, but look, right after Hikaru plays this queen d4, and look at the evil bar. It doesn't like it. Apparently after bishop e5, black is back to the game.
Yep. Queen does not have good squares to go to, right? Queen on a7, I'm starting to get concerned as to whether the queen actually has a path out, but of course has to, right? There's no way we're not that we would get trapped and lose the game, but obviously a repetition also ends this match. So you have to be so careful that your queen actually has an escape route.
Oh, and the b6 trying to trap the queen, as you mentioned, but queen a6 and just going out of that danger zone with the queen to e2. And I want to highlight to everybody, we are currently having a queen versus a rook and a bishop, which is technically not enough as a compensation, but this position is so solid in terms of the pawn structure. We just saw a almost total symmetrical situation, and now you'd think that white gained the pawn on a6, but there is a pawn in a3 that is also falling, and it seems like the position is just not open enough for white to convert that queen advantage.
And there's something important to point out about this imbalance is that if the pawns on b3 and b6 disappear, the chances of a draw are much, much higher. Usually if you have the extra material, you want to have pawns on the side of the board. You want to have the threat of a potential queen. So the fact that there was 2 pawns on the queen side for both, and there might become 0, is really good for Magnus Carlsen's drawing chances, because you just want to eliminate things. And imagine that we trade every single thing that's equal in this position. Dina, it's going to be the queen against the rook and the bishop, and that's not going to be enough to win.
Yeah, they're like, it only takes these B pawns to be traded in order for black to have that ideal fortress. No way Hikaru can actually break through. And now we see rook c8 on the board. The eval bar is slightly going up, but then it's going down, and then it's still equal.
Well, let's also remind everyone that this is a really, really tough position for even the best players in the world to get a grip on. We're not looking at an extra pawn position where everyone can understand my position is just better because I have one extra pawn. This is a position where black could also be better as well, right? You have an imbalance where the minor pieces and the rooks can actually play really, really nicely together. And look at the evaluation. Magnus is better.
What just happened with this rook on e1 and the queen on f1 and the king on g1? It only takes bishop to h1 and knight to b1 to declare a freestyle begin.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be too excited about this position. He also knows after b5, it took away such a key c4 square from himself. He's moving the bishop back so he can maybe threaten f4, but Magnus is pouncing on this position. He knows that he can eliminate that b pawn if the knight has to move, and it's Hikaru who's shaking his head because that's the pawn disappearing. It's not even, I mean, the queen's almost trapped with bishop c4.
I'm telling you, bishop h1 is the move.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Bishop c4 is such an incredibly strong move here. It literally wins the entire queen. So your bishop h1 is such a sad concession, but it might be necessary. The b pawn is going though. Hikaru's got that extra queen, but it's been him who's been being outplayed.
Yep, and that's honestly a little bit sad to me, but we do still have some hope here for Armageddon if Hikaru manages to open up the king, which he is doing right now with this f4 move, targeting the e5, and just hoping to get some checks on the dark squares. Remember, all it takes for the queen is to have an activity.
Yeah, he's definitely trying here, but there are so many ways for black to lock down this game, and speaking of lockdown, the move e4 does exactly that. b4 would be such a devastating shot. But I would say, yeah, rook a2 is more natural because he wants to bring the other rook down to d2, and then there's all the threats in the position.
Ouch. Even if you play bishop to e4, oh, f6, okay. Attacking the king, hoping for the king g8 and queen c8 checkmate.
Yeah, he's hoping on basically a prayer there. King goes back to g7, and although there's queen e5 picking up the knight, you're also dropping your bishop on g2.
And walking right into a checkmate into.
Yep, and also if the king moves, white can make a draw by repeating. I think that's why Hikaru is kind of, just grimacing. He's not happy. He knows that if black, just moves the king back and forth and white checks with the queen, yeah, congrats, you made a draw from a bad position, but Magnus is more than happy with that.
Yeah, I was even thinking about, taking the pawn on e4, knight takes, queen takes, and then sacrificing the rooks with rook g2, forcing the exchange endgame for white, which would not be winning. But this is not happening. Queen f4, queen c7. Are we going to see a perpetual?
Well, yeah, obviously the eval bar is saying, wait a minute, what are you doing? You're ruining this position. But Magnus he's aware of the match situation. He knows that queen f4 is going to be 3 times after king back to g7, and yeah, he's completely happy with that. I think maybe after queen f4, king g7, he could play one more move. I'm not sure if it's exactly 3, but Hikaru, does he have better? I mean, I just can't even see any reasonable attempts here. He's worse, and his time is also expiring.
That could be the end of the Chessable Masters 2025 qualifier number 1.
It definitely looks like there's just no winning against Magnus Carlsen this event for Hikaru Nakamura.
Well, the bright side is that most likely, as you mentioned, Aman, they both are already qualified for the Esports Cup, but we would love to see just yet another game, yet another Armageddon at the very least.
Yeah, this is kind of what I was expecting. He has one more move, but look how much time he's spending. I think this is more of a mental thing at the moment. We've definitely been there as chess players. You know that things are slipping away. His time is so low that even if he tried to play on here, he would probably lose on time. So at this point, it's just coming to terms with the result and realizing that even with that Magnus Carlsen blunder, stone cold blunder of knight d6 earlier, as time ticks down, I think he will probably claim this draw.
Yep. And ladies and gentlemen, Magnus Carlsen wins the Chessable Masters 2025.
That's it. Team Liquid over Team Falcons in this one, and we are very likely going to see the rematch of that in the Esports World Cup. Do not fret. Hikaru and Magnus have more than punched their tickets in all certainty, so we will see them again. But wow, as the as the players both vacate the scenes there, that is it. All it took was one match because, again, this is a double elimination format. Magnus had already beaten Hikaru earlier, and he did it again just now. Actually, in this one, it was 2.5 to 1.5, so an improved score for Hikaru. But Dina, it still felt like the match was one-sided in the I guess looking at it through the lens of getting a win. That was what was missing for Hikaru. He could hold some games, but he really needed that one win. And personally, I think back to that moment, Queen D4. Oof, he might be thinking about that. Your winner, Magnus Carlsen, he wins the Chessable Masters and takes out Hikaru Nakamura in the grand final.
Yep, certainly one-sided match, even though on the board, on the moves, we had some chances, but it's just so impressive how Magnus every single time can hold in that moment where he makes a mistake and he just pulls himself back. That's the ultimate quality of a champion, world chess champion, ex-world chess champion for a reason.
Right. That's right. It just wasn't Hikaru's tournament against Magnus, but Hikaru pretty much dominated, it felt like, every other player. So when we think back on Hikaru's tournament, it was truly phenomenal. It's just that he didn't have the answers for Magnus Carlsen. So, I mean, guys, we are just treated with the matches that we've been getting between Magnus and Hikaru. That is it in terms of the matches today. Obviously, we talk about Magnus Carlsen. We have to mention Magnus Carlsen's genes, right? They go hand in hand, I think. When Magnus Carlsen was unpaired in the 9th round of December's World Rapid and Blitz Championships, of course, the world #1, and his infamous genes, they took over the chess world. Now, he's putting them up for auction. All the proceeds are going to the Big Brothers Big Sisters charity to support youth mentorship at chess clinics, community events, and beyond, enriching the lives of the young people through the game of chess. The auction will be running this week, so if you are crazy enough to want to claim this iconic piece of chess history, head over to the auction at go.chess.com/Genes auction or use !auction in chat. And we are going to do our best to get Magnus, with or without his genes. We don't need them. We'll auction those off. He'll be in his Team Liquid gear for an interview right after this.
Magnus Carlsen arrived to Friday's events in jeans.
They just want to be sure this is jeans or not. They agreed that it's not a jeans. They're just the trousers.
Magnus is showing up fashionably late. Probably some fashionable jeans as well.
Hello, I'm Grandmaster Pepe Cuenca, and this is an absolute banger of a game at the 2024 Julius Baer Generation Cup. The battle kicked off with a double fianchetto, but after a few moves, it sneakily transposed into a King's Indian setup and then fianchetto variation. Black went for queen to c8, targeting h3, and then came a tactical shot and pieces started flying off the board. And if you, yes you, decide to play bishop to c3 here, then you would deserve a lifetime in prison. Instead, bishop g7 was played, but black still stuck with that sad backward pawn on d6. Firouzja brilliantly sacrificed the d6 pawn, because grabbing it would be a disaster, because after a4 the queen side just collapses. Magnus then traded the dark square bishops and started squeezing black on the d-file, but just that pressure wasn't enough. Nah, he wanted blood, so he went for f4, and touching that pawn would mean losing the queen. Firouzja tried to steam things up with a4, then Magnus smacked down with b5, forcing black to capture. The c4 pawn fell, but after e5 the d5 pawn was hanging by a thread. Now, after a couple of trades, after queen e6, we entered in Whose King is Weaker, the Extreme Edition. Then Firouzja played the inaccurate queen takes e4, and Magnus switched into terminated mode, pushing e6, exploiting the overloaded black queen. After rook g7, white had a simple plan, rook d8 followed by rook d7. But wait, black has queen takes e6. So what did Magnus do? Oh, just special f5 sacrifice, throwing wood on the fire. Black, in full Mayday mode, tried to mix things up with some checks and f4. Here, the winning move was king to d3, calmly preparing king e2 after f2, doing a little dance before delivering the knockout punch. But Magnus played king to e3, allowing queen e1 with a perpetual check, since the white king could never touch the d-file. So just when it seemed like Firouzja had escaped, he blundered with f2, and now Magnus just had to do one thing: run, Forrest, run, dragging his king across the board until it found a cozy hiding spot.
Wear your love of chess on your sleeve with all new apparel and accessories from the Chess.com merch store. Maybe you simply want a clock that will never run out, or a mouse pad that will finally unlock your speed chess potential. Whether you play chess to get energized with your morning coffee, or play into the wee hours of the night and witness the occasional alien abduction, we've got something for every king, queen, and knight in shining armor. Even gift cards for your loved ones who've caught the chess bug. So check out the Chess.com shop for apparel, accessories, and more. Grab your favorites before they're gone.
The Esports World Cup is the place where the best gamers across all disciplines have the chance to come together. If you look at the history of games, the oldest, most important game of all time was still missing. The addition of chess is a super important step to have all the best games in the Esports World Cup.
I think chess is perfectly suited for this format. I love having a bit of a hybrid of over-the-board live events with computers and a live audience. It is purely a skill-based game where you can test yourself against your opponent. There are no excuses if you win or lose. It's fast-paced actions. So I'm really excited for us to be part of it this year. Hopefully it's the start of something big.
Welcome back to the 2025 Chessable Masters. Dina and myself are still here, but we're here with the winner, Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen. Magnus, what an event. Congratulations. And I guess, how are you feeling right now after taking down one of your biggest rivals twice in this tournament?
Yeah, I feel really good. Obviously, it wasn't perfect. Like, there were a couple of blunders here and there, but I felt overall in the course of 2 matches I played I played the better chess, and generally I'm fairly happy with my level, and to punch my ticket in the overall final as well is great. So yeah, it's very good.
And Magnus, that game number 3 finished in a repetition. Didn't you have flashbacks from the previous match where you just everything in 3 games only?
I've heard Hikaru talk about this specific situation before, where he actually feels like it's a mistake for the person with the black pieces to allow an early draw, and that generally you should try and push in both games 3 and 4 if you're down by 1 point. So I was a little bit surprised that he allowed that. Generally, I felt that it was a good thing for me to bring it 1 game closer to the conclusion, and I didn't feel like he was putting like a ton of pressure on me with the white pieces either. So I thought for me it was an obvious decision. Not going to win any points for bravery, but it did the job.
Well, Magnus, I also wanted to ask you another chess question. I don't know if you scrolled back in the game and saw the moment. I think it was game 2, but there was a moment where he could have taken your bishop, knight takes e5, and played queen d4, offering a queen trade. And the engine was saying that it was almost guaranteed that white would win a pawn. Do you remember that position? I mentioned it because it was kind of a big moment and probably the best chance for Hikaru in that game.
Yeah, it's funny that I passed over it very, very quickly during the game, and I was like, it looks to me that the pawn endgame is a draw, because I get the king to d5, and then I can block the queen side. And as he later in the game, I was thinking like maybe this was just wrong, and then I checked it afterwards that yeah, it was just stupid. So clearly that was a fleeting chance that he missed. I think apart from that, he didn't really have anything.
And Magnus, on a slightly different note, you just appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast. What a treat for all of us chess fans. How important was it for you think, to appear and be interviewed just after Donald Trump and Elon Musk and all those most influential people in the world?
Yeah, I don't really think about the other guests that are there and have been there and so on. Like, I was just trying to do my best and hang on. I mean, I don't think it went fantastic, but I think overall it's going to be to bring publicity to the game. So I hope not only that, but I hope also some people enjoy it as well.
Now, I definitely did, Magnus. I also wanted to ask you what you thought about the format. I think we were talking with Alireza, who said, his older colleagues may not like the no increment chess, but he certainly does. I mean, how is no increment for yourself? And do you feel like one of his older colleagues?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea to have an increment from some point on, maybe like move 80 or something, just so you don't have the sort of the worst rook against rook kind of flagging situations. But apart from that, I'm all for it being cutthroat and for poor time management being punished. So I'm generally, even though I am one of the older players in this field, I'm all for it.
And we're here enjoying your amazing gene story yet reveal once again. Have you personally placed any bids on that pair?
I can tell you that I have not checked what the bids are, and I have not placed any bids, but yeah, I hope that people enjoy that as well.
Well, I think it's over 8,000, just to give you an update, and that's only in the first day. And I guess as we close out here, Magnus, I wanted to ask you about what it means representing Team Liquid in this event. You're obviously punching your ticket to the Esports World Cup, and what it would mean representing them on the bigger stage. Do you feel any extra pressure now that you're not just playing for yourself, but you sort of have a larger org in mind? Does that affect any of your decisions?
No, I'm very happy with the support that I've gotten from Team Liquid so far. They've been extremely helpful setting up everything here, and yeah, I love the team so far. But you know, when I play my tournaments, I just make moves, try and do my best, and don't think about you know, money or teams or whatever. I think it's that's important for me in order to be able to perform at something close to my best level.
And one last question before you go, Magnus, will you miss Hikaru if he retired?
Of course. I think Hikaru is still an incredibly strong player, as you saw in his matches. For instance, like outplaying Nepomniachtchi in back-to-back matches, and I think he's still very, very strong. So I don't see him retiring, at least from faster chess, anytime soon. It's just, you know, he enjoys it, and there are going to be mishaps here and there, and they're coming from me as well, and there will be more and more with age, but it's still fun.
Well, Magnus, thank you for joining us for the interview. Of course, congratulations on winning the Chessable Masters, and of course, we'll see you in the Esports World Cup. Congrats again.
Thank you.
There you have it. We are taking a look now at the overall standings of the tour. This is the road to the Esports World Cup. That was Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen, and you'll find his name right on the top of the table. He's getting 100 points, which effectively means we will see him guaranteed in that final, along with Hikaru Nakamura. And you can see the prize money awarded as well, Dina. And the players, I would say, in the top 10 are feeling pretty good. Remember, there are 12 spots available in the Esports World Cup up for grabs. And there is one more event coming, very similar to this one, where players can also collect points.
Yep, so there is still hope for them. There is still yet another opportunity for all those of them. But as far as for now, I guess the show will be over for today. But maybe a few more important announcements before we go.
Well, I mean, apart from the first place, Magnus Carlsen, we should mention that, Hikaru Nakamura, we will definitely see him as well. But we have to mention Jan Nepomniachtchi. Not only did he have a phenomenal event, but based on the amount of points that he has claimed there, 65, it will be Jan, it will be Hikaru, and it will be Magnus guaranteed in the Esports World Cup. But still 9 other spots up for grabs. That concludes our day, Dina. I mean, it was kind of short, right? We only got that one single match. Hikaru just could not find the breakthrough, but he wasn't without his moments, right? We asked Magnus in the interview, but that one queen trade opportunity, I know that Hikaru saw it, considered it, and even Magnus himself, he's considered it and thought, wait, there's no way that could actually be bad. Maybe a big opportunity missed, but Dina, would you say the better chess won today? It did feel like overall Magnus had the better match.
Well, the match was definitely more exciting than the first one we've seen 2 days ago. So yeah, I think that's more than we could have dreamed of.
Well, that is the 2025 Chessable Masters. We can't wait for the next one, which will be concluding the path to the Esports World Cup. From myself, Grandmaster Mon Hambleton, and of course, Women's Grandmaster Dina Belenkaya, we say goodbye. Thanks to the chat for watching. Shout out production, the mods, everyone. We will see you guys in the next one.
A c5. Okay. C takes d4.
So you playing without C?
Yeah, we're playing blindfold. Oh, what up, Kenny? What's up, bro?
That's another level right there. This boy not even looking at the what? I'm about to just do all this. What? See how really good you are.
Castle king side?
Yeah.
Queen side?
King side.
He went kings. Oh, he went king side. Okay.
Wow.
Wait, how did he castle king side? Is his bishop on d3? So let's do bishop takes d3. I swore he didn't move that. That's funny. It's kind of funny. So it's queen on d3, pawn on d4, pawn on d5, pawn on c4, pawn on d6. He's castled. I have a queen on d8, queen on d3 now. So bishop f5 was an error, actually. Okay, so let's go h6 then. It's interesting. F rook e8. If rook takes, take with the rook. What? Rook takes rook, and then pre-move rook e8.
Shots fired. Rook takes rook, and he took the bishop. Yeah.
Okay, he took the bishop. Oh, okay.
You want to keep that pre-move?
Nah. c5, so that means d5 is hanging. His queen's on d2, bishop on e1, pawn on d4. He plays c5. Okay, there's a pawn on d4, there's a pawn on d5, c5, and b4.
30 seconds left.
I'm gonna just snatch that boy, huh? Knight takes d5, bro. You got a pawn on c5, b4. I got a pawn on d4, d6. Knight on d5, bishop g7, queen on d7. You have a queen on d2, bishop e1, rook on a1. I have a rook on a8 still.
Take and take, and if takes, I take. If takes, take and take, and if takes, I take it.
Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. Pawn d3, that should be GG. Oh, okay, trying to be tricky. Look at him with the little trick. I'm gonna take that with the pawn. He tricky. He look at him. He thought I wasn't gonna see that. Rook e1?
Yeah, I mean, your block.
Okay, all right. So let's go. Rook takes e1 check first. After bishop takes b2.
Goodness! I knew that. I didn't know he saw that. I didn't know he saw that. That's the whole point. Yeah.
That's it? Resignation?
That's it.
Let's go! Let's go!
David versus Goliath on the board. A young Grandmaster dares to challenge Magnus Carlsen, but no one saw this ending coming. I am Grandmaster Pepe Cuenca, and you have to see this game from the Champions Chess Tour 2024. This epic showdown kicks off with an English opening, where Black plays bishop to c5, a trendy choice among the elite. White starts looking for play along the semi-open c file, with the mighty Little Devil on g2 ready to strike. a5 is a must to stop White's b4 expansion. No free real estate here. After bishop to b6, Black's pawn structure takes a hit. But hey, at least the weakness on c7 is gone. e3 is played to stop bishop takes f3 followed by knight d4. A couple of rooks leave the party early, and now queen e1 is sneaky, planning to put pressure on a potential b4 pawn. But then knight d5 drops like a bomb. Black is eyeing knight takes b4, ready to munch on the d3 pawn like a midnight snack. And Magnus pulls off a brilliant exchange sacrifice. Things are about to get wild. c5 is a good move, slamming the door on d4 like a boss. Knight d2 looks logical, but now Black's advantage starts snowballing. a6 was the way to go, but instead Magnus goes all in. Queen to the back, ready to push. Now f2 is sweating bullets. Knight c1 is a great move, making way for the rook. And now queen e4 lands like a hammer, hitting e5 and setting up rook to d1. The Viking of chess is now rook down, but he's putting all his hopes on the a pawn, which by the way has a jetpack thanks to the g2 rocket. Lazovic, calm as ever, finds the only winning move again, knight to d2. Forget about bishop d5 because rook takes a7 crushes the party. And then c4, run. White starts dreaming about queen h7 checkmate, but hold up, Black has just enough defensive firepower. Once the queen lands on f6, the rook slides to e8 and the Black king sneaks away like a coward to h8, White is left with nothing but sadness and resignation. Game over, what a battle!